Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Greg Capullo Day, so we're taking a look at his next issue of QUASAR, issue number 28, cover dated November 1991. Cover is pretty much self-explanatory. Who will be her mate? That's basically the story here. Her, this character here that we see from the back, who's kind of a female version of Adam Warlock, basically. I'm not quite sure where she comes from, what her origins are, but that's what it seems like here. Looking for a mate amongst the Marvel Universe's male cast, right? And that's basically it. So the cover here, again, a slight disappointment because we've got Keith Williams inking again, and just there's something about his inks I've talked about before, past issues, that just doesn't work for me with Greg Capullo. It's like his lines are too thick, and it's almost more of a mid-'80s kind of aesthetic that, you know, really doesn't work with the kind of stuff that's coming out in the 90s. And I was always surprised looking at these early issues of QUASAR to see that, because I definitely don't associate Greg Capullo as that type of artist. So it just goes to show you how much of a difference an inker can do on a penciler. In this case, with Keith Williams inking Greg Capullo and making his stuff look a little more dated and 80s-ish, if I can say that, to my great surprise when I opened this one up, because I thought the inker change would be next issue, but to find that Harry Candelario has jumped in on this issue on the interiors. Great surprise, and right away, what a difference it makes, okay? So Greg Capullo is still the penciler, but you'll notice as we go through these pages, the aesthetic has completely changed, and we have finally now moved into the 90s. Not quite exactly the Image aesthetic, but pretty close, or at least an early 90s aesthetic. The line's a lot cleaner, and it just feels way more modern, at least for the 90s, right? Than what was going on before in QUASAR. So I really appreciate the jump in the quality of the inking in this issue. And it just goes to show you what a difference an inker can make on someone as you know, already fairly talented early on in his career as Greg Capullo, where, you know, the previous issues were thick, kind of badly printed, 80s looking stuff, if I can put it that way. And now we've thoroughly moved right into the 90s with this one. Even, I'm going to say right away as we go through it, the colors. I don't remember if Joe Rosas was on before. I feel like he was. But the colors that I didn't like before all of a sudden work so much better with the slightly more open and, you know, thin-lined, clean kind of artwork that we're getting here. Right away, we get a great down shot of QUASAR and a buddy here, who I think is Jack of Hearts, in their human guise, right? You know, fixing up the apartment and stuff. And even though they're doing something fairly mundane, the angle, the down shot, you know, the bird's eye view, super well done, and just makes the image more dynamic, as well as the kind of the ghost image here of the character. I think Jack of Hearts, like I said again, kind of moving about here from one place to the next, which is not something I think Greg Capullo is going to do a lot of. But, you know, I think works pretty well here. Obviously, his style's a little lighter and more fun than what he was doing on Spawn later on, right? Not quite the exact same vibe here. And the aesthetic is completely different, but I, again, do recognize Greg Capullo's male faces here much more than with the past inker. A general comment, even as a kid, I kind of thought there's almost kind of a feminine quality to QUASAR's face, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it, because, I mean, it's the kind of, even today, standard kind of face composition that Greg Capullo uses for his male figures. You know, he'd already kind of worked that out here. I feel it's pretty distinct. But what I noticed is with QUASAR, and he does it with this other character here too, but mostly with QUASAR, he's actually, in closer up shots, goes in and really defines the eyelashes, right? So I feel like maybe that adds a little bit to that feminine kind of quality to his face. I don't know if that was a conscious choice or something, you know, if there was a reason for it, but yeah. But yeah, just the overall art is just already just, it feels bouncier and more lively. You know, Capullo's already a pretty good master at storytelling, and even, like I said, in fairly mundane scenes, making characters move around and stuff. Like, just, you know, Jack of Hearts back here with his hand up and stuff. That's just a great kind of bit of body language, I find. Really well done with his eyebrows up there. Like, just great personality in the character drawing. I mean, he's got a pretty 90s mullet, let's be honest, right? This is just, it's 91, so Nirvana's just hitting in around this time. Eventually, you know, the mullet's kind of, I think the mullet died with grunge. I might be wrong on that, but I feel like it died in around that time. So eventually QUASAR, I think, is going to get a shorter haircut. all this stuff here, like look at all this line, all these lines and that type of hatching and stuff. Definitely more akin to Image Comics here already than what we were getting before. Great female figure here. You know, sign of things to come when he does Angela and stuff. It's the same facial structure, it's the same hair, just the aesthetic on top is a little different, but we're definitely moving in the right direction here. Here's an example of where, I mean, it still works storytelling wise, but there's this thing where some of those guys who were looking at the Jim Lee stuff and the Rob Liefeld stuff and the extreme hatching, you know, it would get to a point where, I know Rob Liefeld would do this where the lines move really far apart, but they're doing it here and I don't find it quite works as well as when Rob Liefeld does it for some strange reason, right? I feel like the hatching should have been a little bit tighter here and the images would have worked better, but the overall effect of the lighting of the scene, I think works pretty well. And again, it's a very, very early 90s thing to do, so. Interesting design here to Quasar's apartment. There's like these weird stairs here. I don't know what exactly that's all about. Got some screen tones here still being used in the early 90s. Yeah, again, I'm just, every time I see her, the female figure here, I'm reminded of Angela, right? And just here, this is such a Greg Capullo panel, right? We've seen this 1,000 times in, you know, Batman and stuff and Spawn. There's just this basic composition, the way he draws his men and his women, just two kind of, well, listen, we're dealing with, you know, Warlock used to be called him, so I guess, you know, it's almost like Adam and Eve, so he's kind of going for prototypical man, prototypical woman. And in comic books, you know, we recycle that prototype a lot, so this was a fun surprise too, to see Greg Capullo's kind of early interpretation of the X-Men characters, the early 90s Jim Lee designs, right? Pretty good job here. There's kind of a I'm iffy on the Wolverine. I almost feel like his Wolverine's a little more like 80s and old school in the depiction. I don't know if that's the inker. And Cyclops feels firmly rooted in that early 90s kind of look. Almost akin to some of the stuff I'd see Adam Kubert do when he was on X-Men as well. They definitely have talked about how they have a similar style, I find, that works well together. Some sort of synergy going on there. So yeah, it's basically, again, story-wise, this one's actually more fun than maybe the past few issues and storylines that we've gone over. It's just her kind of going around and seeing all the more kind of alpha male, prime, masculine dudes of the Marvel Universe and figuring out who she should mate with, right? I told you, it's a pretty simple conceit all throughout the issue. She does this thing, though, where like here with Wonder Man, there's a little bit of magic that goes on. They add that movement line to really make sure you pay attention to the hand and that little color hold Kirby crackle that we've got here, which right away is much better than the Kirby crackle that Keith Williams was inking in past issues, right? So even though this is a color hold, it was probably inked in black at some point, I have to assume. Maybe not, but usually that's how it goes. And it's just much tighter and much more... it's much more of a Royer style Kirby crackle than, say, a Vince Coletta. So what we see here is that there's some sort of weird cocoon that's growing on his back there where she touched him. I'm not quite sure where that's going to go. We're going to find out more in the next issue, I'm assuming. But this definitely harkens back to him, right? And Warlock, who was actually born of a cocoon. So there's got to be a connection with that for sure. I really like this whole splash here because it's just fun to see Greg Capullo even early on doing his interpretations of like the Marvel characters of the day, right? And he's doing a really good job at it overall, I would say. And, you know, some of them look a little more kind of, I don't want to say amateurs, but early Greg Capullo style, some of the stuff here. But then with the Hulk and the Thing, I feel like he almost spent just a little bit more time there. And they just really come out really well, these two headshots here. Funny to see Dave Grohl here, or the singer from Monster Magnet, not sure. One or the other. Good bird's eye view here of the three guys here, Hercules, Thor, and Quasar. I always give props to artists who are really good at doing that because it's something I struggle with a lot. So kudos to Greg Capullo on that great panel. Ooh, a lot of ads in this one. I felt the comic was thicker when I picked it up. Now I realize why. These pages are definitely a lot thicker than the regular newsprint pages in here. So again, her continuing on her quest for a mate, and of course she meets Hercules, puts her hand here. We get the Kirby crackle, so we're going to assume something's going to grow out of Hercules' back here. Thought this this line here was funny. You have the right attributes to become one of my mates. You say you wish to what? All right. Mate with you. Thou hast talked me into it. Just how quickly he's, ready for action here. Doesn't happen though, and she walks off, and that's where Quasar realizes that there's something going on, and there's something stuck to Hercules' back where her touched him, so he knows something's going on, and flies off to catch her. I can tell from this issue, I feel like Greg Capullo is starting to push the layouts a bit more, the storytelling, the overlapping panels, the different compositions, a little bit of negative space here, just a big black panel behind these ones here. He's definitely upping his design game. He's using the 90s vertical panels. So as opposed to what we saw in earlier issues, he's starting to kind of get into his groove and try some interesting compositions that are a little more out there, not fully yet, like say when he was doing Spawn, but a little more out there for a Marvel comic. And again, another aspect that helps bring it right into the 90s at that time. Love this panel here. Just going to point it out because, man, the crop on this is insane. To have just a knuckle and a bit of the thumb, just the slightest hint of his hair and his face, and, part of the arm, and the balls to just cut that off that way. But this is, to me, such a beautiful, clever panel. It jumped out at me, and I'm like, man, the balls to do that, but it works so well. You know exactly what's going on. You can imagine the rest of his body, right? That Superman flying pose. Really hard to crop something so perfectly, I think. And all this stuff is fun because, again, it's happening up in the sky. You don't have to worry about backgrounds too much, even though I do really like... I'm a big fan of clouds as background elements, so if you have an opportunity to throw them in, you do. I think Capullo's doing a really good job with it here. Helps to frame the character a little bit, right? And, in prior issues, I've talked about this weird kind of leaving the section white and doing the color holds that I thought looked odd, maybe because it was on a dark background in space, and maybe had something to do with that inker from past issues that I'm not too fond of. But I feel like here it works pretty well. Again, good example of here how the colors, I feel it's the same colorist, doing the same kind of job that he was doing before, but it just works much better. Maybe because we're not in space again, and we've got like a nice, clear, bright background. Maybe that helps. And yeah, here's, again, when we get close up on Quasar, those feminine kind of elements I was talking about. It looks a little feminine here to me. He's got a strong jaw, but, the lips are really defined. Getting a bit of the eyelash. It's something like, unless you really want to do that on purpose for some reason, it's something, I would maybe discourage you from doing so that, your character doesn't look like a cross-dresser or a transgender, whatever you want to call that. I just feel like we're getting a little bit of drag queen vibes here from Quasar. And we're not getting it here. So it's almost kind of completely, drawn out the bottom lip, and he doesn't do it here. The top lip, you can kind of get away with, on a male figure and drawing it out. But, you want to do something like this here to keep some of the character's basic masculinity, if I can put it that way. And the issue ends. We find out, I guess, that, there was a shot there in the panel where her was holding Quasar by the neck. So this cocoon kind of thing has kind of started to hatch on his neck here. He's kind of touching it with his hand. And Jack O'Hart's clearly pissed off and has some bone to pick with her, which I guess we're going to find out about more about that next issue. All right, there you go, guys. That is my review of Quasar, issue number 28. If you are subscribed and you're still watching, thank you so much for the support. I really do appreciate it. If you're watching but you're not subscribed, please like and subscribe below. It really helps the channel out, helps us grow, and helps get us out there to other people who are into comic books, just like we are. We've just hit 500 subs. Thank you so much, everyone out there, once again. And we're on the road to our milestone of the next 500 to hit 1,000. So if you know anyone out there who might be interested in my channel and my type of reviews, send them my way, and hopefully if you like what you see, you will subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much, guys, and have yourselves an awesome day.
Like! Subscribe! Like! Subscribe!
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13. 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.